held captive, then court-martialed. Now, no longer convicted. What's next for Bowe Bergdahl, the dishonorably discharged soldier from Haley? The Weed Warriors are coming out with a vengeance. We're talking about the tire-popping, paw-poking kind. And to get rid of them, well, it seems to be a constant battle. But they're getting a little help from Boise State. The next generation is getting in on the getting rid of the Snake River dams conversation, and they're taking their cause to the streets and the big screen. For about 5 years, you could not pass through the city of Haley without noticing all the yellow ribbons, the yellow balloons, and yellow signs calling for the return of Bowe Bergdahl. There are even some scattered around Boise, around the state capitol. Bowe Bergdahl is the Army soldier from Blaine County who was captured in Afghanistan by the Taliban in 2009 and finally returned in a prisoner exchange in 2014. Of course, there was a lot more to it than that. And Bergdahl was eventually charged, tried, and convicted after an investigation into how he became a captive of the Taliban. But that wouldn't be the end of it either, because a couple of years ago, Bergdahl filed a lawsuit to get that court-martial conviction voided. And yesterday, a federal judge did just that, vacating the 2017 conviction based on a potential conflict of interest with the presiding military judge. Apparently, that judge didn't disclose the fact he applied to be an immigration judge within then-President Trump's executive branch, and that posed a problem, Bergdahl's attorney claimed, because of the public comments Trump made about Bergdahl. Now that part, that Trump's comments may have influenced the outcome of the trial, that part was denied by the appellate judge. But that failure to disclose a conflict of interest part, that is why Bowe Bergdahl's desertion and misbehavior before an enemy conviction is no longer. So now what? Well, before we get to that, it might be worth revisiting through the KTVB archives how Bowe Bergdahl got to this point. Born in the Wood River Valley, the second child to Jenny and Bob Bergdahl, Bowe grew up spending a lot of time outdoors. He joined the Army in June of 2008, was stationed at Fort Richardson in Alaska within 4 months of that, and by February of 2009, he was deployed to Afghanistan. Then on the last day of June, Bowe Bergdahl went missing.
Any message to your people?
Americans first learned about his capture.
Yes, to my fellow Americans who have loved ones over here.
With the first images released by the Taliban of Private First Class Bowe Bergdahl's appeal.
You have the power to make our government bring them home.
On July 18th, 2009.
Please bring us home.
Early reports offered little insight as to how he got there. A 5-year ordeal that began 19 days earlier on June 30th.
Bergdahl came off patrol, dropped off his weapon and body armor, then gathered up a couple of water bottles, a compass, and a knife, and left the base alone.
Pentagon sources tell NBC's Jim Miklaszewski that Bergdahl disappeared when he went to meet Afghans he had befriended.
That's when the Taliban grabbed him.
Proof of identity came with the proof of life video, which U.S. officials immediately called propaganda.
Well, I'm scared. I'm scared I won't be able to go home. It is very unnerving to be a prisoner.
July 18th, a video surfaces on the internet showing Bergdahl out of uniform. We hear him choking back tears as he talks about his family in Haley.
I miss them, and I'm afraid that I might never see them again.
A day later,
please bring us home so that we can be back where we belong and not over here wasting our time and our lives.
The Pentagon confirms it is Bergdahl and lists him as missing, captured.
Our commanders are sparing no effort to find this young soldier.
His hometown of Haley quickly becomes a national backdrop as media from all over the country tell his story, putting up yellow ribbons.
Well, as long as he's alive, of course, I certainly hope. And so that's what we're holding out for, is that he will be released.
While Bowe's parents remain secluded, the president makes it clear they are not forgotten.
We are doing everything we can. I can't talk in detail about.
Have you spoken to his family?
I have not spoken to his family at this point, simply because we want to make sure that before we do, we have something to tell them.
Within days.
This is great show of community support. That's what it's all about.
Family, friends, and neighbors hold a vigil to bring Bowe back.
Oh, America, America.
Please continue to pray with us for Bowe, for the servicemen and women.
Nearly a year later, another video surfaces.
I miss them, I love them, and I pray to God to see them again.
He would see them again, but not for almost another 4 years.
Sitting in a pickup truck, we get our first clear image of Sergeant Bowe Bergdahl in 3.5 years. He's clean-shaven and appears in fairly good physical condition.
Bergdahl, promoted to sergeant while in captivity, would be released on May 31st, 2014, in exchange for 5 Taliban leaders held by America.
5 years is a seemingly endless long time, but you've made it. Freedom is yours. I will see you soon, my beloved son.
And there's a lot of excitement in town. I mean, it's really all about that family and Bowe's service to the country.
Plans for a party began immediately.
It is going to be one huge party, the likes of which Haley has never seen.
But it's one they wouldn't see, because as details of how Bergdahl became a prisoner of war were released, of walking away from his post to draw attention to what he perceived as problems in military leadership, emotions about Bergdahl's return became mixed.
No yellow ribbons and POW signs taken down. And many outside Idaho have spoken out, seeking justice against him.
That attempt at justice would come less than a month after Bergdahl arrives back home on American soil.
In June 2014, the Army announces it will investigate Bergdahl's disappearance. In August, Bergdahl waives his right to remain silent and answers questions from Army investigators. The charges announced today against Bergdahl come 10 months after the Haley sergeant was released in a controversial prisoner exchange for 5 Taliban commanders held at Guantanamo Bay.
He was charged with desertion and misbehavior before the enemy.
Carries a maximum potential penalty of a dishonorable discharge, reduction to the rank of E1, total forfeiture of all pay and allowances, and possible confinement for life.
Bergdahl would plead guilty, and he would face a court-martial in 2017.
Bergdahl spoke on the stand for some 2 hours, detailing his capture and the 5 years spent in captivity. He also said he knew the desertion from his post resulted in the injuries of a handful of soldiers who searched for him.
He said he wants to take responsibility for his role in what happened, and that's why he was offering that apology today.
On November 3rd, 2017, instead of time in prison, Bergdahl gets a dishonorable discharge, a demotion, and a $1,000 forfeiture in pay. Then in February of 2021, Bergdahl believes he has grounds to have his verdict thrown out.
We get Bergdahl, we get a traitor. We get a no-good traitor.
The 16-page complaint claims that former President Donald Trump and Senator John McCain used their influence to affect this trial, and that a judge involved in the case failed to disclose that he had applied for a job in Trump's Department of Justice as an immigration judge and denied that there was any outside pressure on him during his ruling, and as a result denied him a fair trial before an impartial judge, as guaranteed by the Fifth Amendment.
Okay, so we're not forgetting about the fact that Bergdahl was tortured and beaten and kept in a small metal cage during those 5 years in captivity. That's one of the reasons, or the reason, why the judge figured he'd served enough when it came to being locked up. So now let's get to that question of, well, what now? Which is now a good time to bring in Andrew Bartline. So Bergdahl's convictions here, Andrew, have been vacated. Does that mean this is the end of this? Does this just go away? What next?
Not exactly. And to be clear, this isn't an acquittal either, Brian, when we're talking about what happens next. It really is more of a do-over. This opinion is far from clearing him from his charges. Rather, it says the process would need to start over again and start properly, if, of course, it even gets that far the second time around. We talked to retired Idaho Attorney General David Leroy, and he says both sides, though, might have had enough.
It needs to be understood that we have civilian courts and we have military courts, but occasionally there is an intersection between the two. A federal civilian district judge also has the ability to make sure that the procedures in the military court were proper, constitutional, and fair.
What happened exactly with this decision that a judge came out with today?
Well, the judge's decision from the district court in the District of Columbia ruled that the judge apparently had or could have had an improper influence because he had applied for a civilian judgeship at a time when the commander-in-chief had called Bergdahl a traitor.
So we get a traitor named Bergdahl. A dirty, rotten traitor.
Are you talking about President Trump?
President Trump and Senator John McCain. McCain said that he would convene congressional hearings if the punishment wasn't severe enough.
And this judge was looking for a job that Trump essentially had the power over.
This judge had applied for a civilian judgeship, which requires presidential nomination and Senate confirmation.
To vacate this conviction now, what does that mean exactly?
The vacation of this conviction is, in effect, a do-over. The Army is free to prosecute him again, to reinstate the case, or to negotiate another plea bargain. Bergdahl, by the same token, is free to ask for the reinstatement of his rank, back pay, arguably, as well as ask his dishonorable discharge to be changed to an honorable discharge if he chooses not to go back into the Army.
But there's a risk with this, is there not? Because it could go the other way. Doing this over again, could there not now be a punishment that was worse than what was originally decided on his previous conviction?
Well, Bergdahl has received no jail time, no time in the brig, and a dishonorable discharge. If he were to go back to a brand new trial, potentially his dishonorable discharge could be upheld, and he could be levied other penalties like a loss of back pay and even time in jail, even at this late date.
Is that a possibility where both sides, after this conviction's vacated, look at each other and say, maybe this isn't worth our time anymore, let's just call it what it is and move on?
It's reasonable to presume, therefore, that the parties will work out some other kind of negotiated plea arrangement where some penalty is had, but the matter is put behind both the Army and Bergdahl.
So why is this happening now, 6 years after a conviction? Well, that's how long it took to exhaust all military court appeals before making its way to this district court judge in Washington, D.C. Any new trial, if the U.S. Army chooses to prosecute, would go back to military court, which is important to note, Brian, that it came through this 63-page opinion. I mean, this thing's huge.
It's hefty.
It is. And in this, it doesn't say specifically that that judge was not impartial. It just says there was an appearance of it,
right,
which seems to be enough at this point.
It's worth pointing out, we did try to reach out to Bowe Bergdahl's parents, and you did reach out to his attorney.
Yep, spoke with us briefly, said they're gratified by the opinion, but still looking through the documents.
All right, so there's still more to this. Another chapter possibly for Bowe Bergdahl. Thank you very much, Andrew. It is a constant battle on the pathways and sometimes the sidewalks of Boise. The enemy, well, they can sometimes do a fine job of hiding, attacking by puncturing puppy paws, bare feet, and bike tires. But every Wednesday, there's a team that does some of attacking of its own, and Joe Paris gets down and dirty with the Weed Warriors.
Goat heads are a problem for everyone.
Goat heads. Oh, yes. It's a real city of Boise. If you know, you know.
They're an invasive species that everybody has a personal story associated with. A lot of other invasive species may not impact our everyday lives in ways that are tangible to us. The hatred of them is real.
So real that scientists at Boise State are working to eradicate goat heads from the city of Boise altogether. They worked on this for several years. It's a hotspot map of all 60 miles of pathways throughout the city of Boise. The BSU team marked the location of every goat head plant they found with GPS. But marking it is only half the battle.
I can't believe how much time I spend thinking about it. It's what's going on.
Martha Brabeck is an ecologist with the City of Boise Parks and Recreation. She leads a volunteer team every Wednesday for goat head extraction.
This is a hotspot on the goat head hotspot map. By removing goat heads here, we can reduce the spread of goat heads to other locations.
These pesky little pricks have popped bike tires, maimed dog paws, and overgrown, threatening habitats. Wouldn't it be nice if this evil was just eradicated? Could it be done?
There is a belief that we can get to that place where Boise is indeed goat head free. I don't know how long it's going to take. I sincerely feel with the community behind this effort, we can do it.
These are the front lines of the battle. The weed warriors are on the ground with the tools of the trade.
It's so funny that we have these conversations like, oh, that tool is really effective.
Their strategy is simple. Dig these suckers out.
I have had several flats from goat heads, yes, so it's a huge motivation for me to get out and clean them up.
You'll regularly find Diane Burning digging in with weed warriors. And for Diane, the battle is personal. These sweet yellow flowers have that ugly side.
It's more of a slow leak, and you get somewhere and you stop and you're having dinner or lunch or whatever, and then you get back on your bike and you're like, oh, it's flat.
The team works for a few hours, transforming a new spot every week. Remember the map? Yeah, there are a lot of hot spots to hit. So in a world that can be so divided, goat heads seem to be a unifying topic.
A lot of people say thank you. I think once again we can go back to the everyone has a puncture vine story. If you biked in Idaho, you've definitely gotten a flat as a result of puncture vine, and so I think people are very appreciative of this work.
So anybody can join the Weed Warriors, just like I did this morning, and here are the goat heads that I collected. Television camera is really good, but Brian, I just want to do a little activity here on the 208 with you.
Why?
So you
Do I have to touch them?
Don't touch them.
Okay, yeah, they hurt.
Don't just toss them. You put them in the bin.
In the bin. That's as simple
Right
as
in
that?
the can.
Okay.
The reason why you want to throw them out is because if you just throw them back into the road or you kick them off your shoes, they germinate, they spread.
They're basically seeds.
Yes,
Yep.
they are seeds, and they're sharp seeds. So take care of them.
All right.
You don't have to wait for permission to take care of them, by the way. If you have them on your property, feel free to dig them up, throw them out. And yeah, if anyone wants to join the Weed Warriors, we have a link on our website, ktvb.com, with the volunteer info, plus the hotspot map. And we'd actually, Andrew Bartline had talked with Boise State kind of more about their work with the Weed Warriors and the goat head. So we have that all linked in this story at ktvb.com. But yeah, careful with these guys.
And it's better to pick them, well, when they're not hard, like when they're green still, when they're just growing. Get them out of them before they get to be those hard needle type pokes.
They hurt. And they draw blood. So
Thanks, Joe. It's a debate that's been going back and forth for decades, about as long as they've been in place, whether or not we should remove the dams along the Snake River. Recently, there's not even agreement among our congressmen, but there is one youth group in total agreement that the dams need to go in order to protect the salmon population. It's a topic they're tackling and promoting in a Patagonia film and along the Boise River.
Tonight we are here for the Patagonia documentary release.
And this is just kind of a celebration of all the hard work that went into it, both on Patagonia's end and on our end. Having them be able to spread that message and share it is super pivotal for small organizations like ours.
Hi! Welcome.
So the Youth Salmon Protectors was started in 2020.
It's a coalition of youth whose goal is to breach the lower 4 dams on the Snake River and restore salmon runs.
People just got really excited about salmon as you learn more about how important they are.
So salmon are a keystone species. So a keystone species is one that supports hundreds of species like on their backs. So salmon support 136 species. It's important that they stick around.
Since 1937, 8 hydroelectric dams have been built on the lower Columbia and Snake Rivers, providing clean, reliable, low-cost energy throughout the Northwest.
4 dams were put into place, and as time went on, there was a decrease in salmon runs, and in 1992, there was a Lonesome Larry, which was one sole salmon that made it up to Redfish Lake. There was only one, and it really was like the starting story of like, this is an issue.
There is movement politically. We just got back from a week-long trip to Washington, D.C., where we worked with politicians and met with them every single day that whole week, and basically discussed with them why salmon are important to us and why salmon should care to them.
What if the dams came out? What if we were able to replace the energy from the dams? What if we came up with different ways of transporting grain?
Getting that done would just feel like everything that we were doing is worth it, and that our elected officials are listening to what would be good for the state.
I want everyone to experience seeing salmon spawning. I want everyone to be able to fish salmon. It's really what Idaho is about, like the wildlife, fishing, rafting, everything. And without salmon, the rivers and the ecosystem that we know it won't exist.
That voice you heard as the phone was playing that video, that was Congressman Mike Simpson, the lone elected official in Washington right now that's in favor of removing the dams. The other side of the debate, though, is protecting the infrastructure for the energy, the irrigation, and transportation that we see now. A debate that is highlighted in that Patagonia documentary. The Youth Salmon Protectors are also in that film, and you can check it out by checking out the link where you can find the film and see it for yourself. It's on our website, ktvb.com. All right, let's get to your comments on this Wednesday. A lot of you chiming in on Bowe Bergdahl's having his conviction vacated. This seemed to be a popular sentiment today. Bowe Bergdahl confessed to having deserted. He is a deserter regardless of what the federal judge decided, says Mike. Or this one, he's a deserter. Poor judgment of the military judge doesn't negate that. He may get his conviction erased, but he still deserves the dishonorable discharge, loss of rank and benefits. He left his unit voluntarily, says Frank in Eagle, who is a Vietnam-era vet. How many people lost their lives trying to save him? Not to mention the time and money spent on his actions, asked Ken and Kimberly. Well, there first was reports like 6 people, but those are unconfirmed. We do know that one soldier was shot in the head in 2009 looking for him, and he was paralyzed because of it, but that's the only one that's been confirmed. I didn't catch whether there'll be a Goat Head Festival this summer. I think the last one was pre-pandemic, and that is true, Rick. I do believe there is one coming up on August 19th. They're calling it number 6. So if you want to take part of it, Cecil Andrews Park, downtown Boise, coming up on August 19th. In the meantime, take care of some goat heads in your neighborhood. See you then.